Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and I'm going to give you a bonus video this Friday because it is hot outside. And even in my basement fish room, it is critically hot and threatening the well-being of my species. Now, you may have seen me yesterday on the King of DIY's channel where he talked about different strategies for cooling your aquarium. I'm going to talk to you today about a similar thing, but most specifically how to deal with increasing temperatures and the species that I deal with. Now, this is especially important with the hill streams, the invertebrates, and even the small danios that all come from relatively cooler waters. As our temperatures increase, the availability of usable oxygen goes way down, and there's nothing the fish can do about it. You'll see them go to the surface to try and get closer to that oxygen exchange, but it's really up to us to make sure that we maintain these temperatures. The obvious thing to do would be to turn on your air conditioner, crank it up, make the whole room cooler. I don't have an air conditioner in my fish room, and I don't even have a window where I could put one, nor do I have the few $100s to buy a portable unit. So I have to employ some different strategies. Now, one thing that's also pretty obvious that you can do is cut the lights, turn them off. For a few days, your fish, your plants, everything will be fine. And if it's only a short heat wave, that is an excellent solution. And also open your lids. Allow for that evaporation. Allow your tanks to naturally cool. In my fish room, I have to work down here every day. It doesn't work to turn off my lights. Not to mention, I'd have to go around and unplug every fixture in this basement from the timers, and it's just not a feasible thing for me to do. So what I do is make sure any tanks that do have lids are open. I do adjust my central timer so that the light cycle is shorter. And as you saw yesterday in Joey's video, I've mounted fans at my ceiling line. And I hook these to my central loop, and all that does is blow cool air across the surface, moves the hot air away from the bulk of the fish room, and hopefully produces a more consistent temperature, not only within the fish room, but also within the aquariums. Now, people who have an individual tank or people who live in an area that's exceptionally hot every summer would probably want to invest in a chiller. There's no way I can chill 60 plus tanks. It's just not something I can do. Similarly, a lot of people use frozen water bottles. Also with 60 tanks, it's not something I can do. It's just not realistic. So what I do instead is try and minimize the stress to my fishes by making sure I'm increasing that oxygenation. This means extra sponge filters. In tanks that only have one, I add a second one. In tanks that have two, I add something like a power head that's on a direct supply, so it is pumping 24 hours a day. You have to remember, when we talked about fish stress, it's not only getting too cold, but also too hot that can really stress your fish out and lead to secondary disease. As dangerous as the winter is, summer is just as bad. So I learned the hard way this past weekend to make sure I have redundancy for my aeration. My 150 suffered an outage on the main pump, and I lost an entire species of fish. I've since added in a few different power heads so that if my pump should ever fail again, they still have a supplemental source of oxygenation. Now, the bins outside are a bit trickier. You know, there's only so much you can do about the sun. Now, in my bins, I'm not having too big of a problem, believe it or not, despite the fact that they get the brunt of the summer intensity. And I think a lot of that has to do with there's almost no visible water. Everything is covered by a thick carpet of surface plants, as well as shaded really nicely with marginals. For those of you that don't have that coverage and are running summer tubs outside, buy a cheap umbrella and mount it and provide some shade that way, or a canopy or anything like that, especially during these critical heat spells. The other thing that you can do, especially outside, is just top your bins off each day with cooler water. It sounds obvious, but it really helps. Another thing that I'll do, because I have so many tanks, is if I have a species that's especially critical to keep cool, something like crystal reds or crystal blacks or a particular hill stream loach, I'll actually set up a tank on my concrete floor, because it is substantially cooler on the floor on the concrete than it is on any of my racks, and that can make a huge difference. So again, just to recap, increase your aeration, open your lids. If you can mount some fans to blow across the surface of the water, or even just move the hot water out, try and make sure they come on when your lights are on, if your lights are on. And if you can cool the room, do that first. For your outside bins, provide some extra shade and top them off with cool water. Hope that helps. Make sure you stop by my Facebook as well as my website, MsJinx.com, where you can find my upcoming speaking engagements, my current stock list, and information on all things nano. Make sure you check out Joey's video yesterday for some more in-depth information on how to beat the summer heat for your aquariums.